Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 29th of July to the 2nd of August 2019. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in this coming week and also in the weeks ahead. So let's jump over to the charts and see what the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index. Now, the first thing and the most important thing to note going into next week, that this is a unique week for the US dollar. We have on Wednesday FOMC an interest rate decision out of the US where they are expected to cut interest rates. This is bearish, generally speaking, for the dollar. However, very often the markets can price these cuts in and you can actually see the reverse happen. So just because we're expecting a rate cut, it doesn't guarantee that the dollar index is going to go down. So it makes the dollar riskier going into next week. So because of this, we are not going to be using the dollar index this week because any structure in the dollar index can very easily be reversed, broken or overridden by the interest rate decision and what is said and happens on Wednesday. So we're going to go into this week with a neutral bias on the dollar index, meaning we're prepared to trade the dollar pairs both ways, and we will be looking at trading them based on their own structures. And the second thing going into this week, guys, and it's a good idea going into this week, we've discussed this with our members and I'd like to tell you guys this as well. If you are trading the dollar pairs next week, trade them lightly. That means do not take huge positions in dollar pairs next week and do not trade too many dollar pairs next week, because with this interest rate decision on Wednesday, the markets could be very volatile and difficult to trade. So just bear that in mind going into next week. My advice would be to you guys to trade lightly if you are trading the dollar pairs and don't overcommit. We should see next week, after this interest rate decision out of the way, some much better opportunities coming into the dollar pairs. So with that, just to summarize, we are going into this week with a neutral bias on the dollar index and will be prepared to trade the markets both ways. So the first market we're going to look at this week is crude oil. Now, last week we highlighted the 57.28 area as an area to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. We did come back and we bounced from this area. We have moved the target up from last week. We're looking for the 52.95, but there is now an interim support level at the 54.76 that we need to take note of. So for anybody not involved from last week, if we can get another pullback and a retest of the 57.28, this will once again provide a great opportunity to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 54.76. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 52.95. So the next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now we start the week below a key area of broken support from the past, looking to turn resistance to the 1.12120. If we can get a pullback, and as always, if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance, this is going to be a great place to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.1022. So the next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now last week we started to make our way down towards the target set from last week at the 1.2303. We're still looking further declines going into this week. The pound dollar is still structured to the downside. If we can get a pullback, and preferably this week, if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support, turning resistance to the 1.2475, this will be a great place going into next week to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bearish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 1.2303. And if we can get a break through there, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2, the 1.2215. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now we start the week below a key area of broken support from the past, looking to turn resistance at 0.70240. So going into next week, if we can get a correction in the Aussie dollar, and as always, if we can preferably come back and retest a broken support turning resistance, although we don't have to get a retest in this area, any correction in this area will give us an opportunity, for example, to trade a counter trend line break. But any pullback in this area, preferably if we can tag the 0.70240, is going to give us an opportunity next week to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 0.6866. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2, the 0.6828. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now we start the week sitting at a range bottom, a potential range bottom, and a key area of support at the 0.66310. Going into this week, we are still technically structured to the upside in New Zealand dollar. This, going into next week, is going to be a place we're going to start to see if we can get those bullish formations and patterns. And again, as mentioned in previous videos, we are not just buying and selling on these levels. We are looking at these areas and these levels for tradable patterns in these pairs. And in the New Zealand dollar, if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this area going into next week, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the potential range top at 0.6699. And if we can get a breakthrough there, and we would need a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at 0.6773. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now we start the week above the 0.9864, and you can see we've broken out of this somewhat of a correction, somewhat of a channel to the downside in the US dollar Swiss franc for those of you who like to use your trend lines. We are looking further advances. The market is structured to the upside going into this week. So very simply put, if we can get a correction away from this target to give us better risk reward, if we can get a correction back down towards the 98.64, and preferably if we can come back and retest this would be a fantastic place to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.0000. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now we're currently structured to the upside in the US dollar CAD. We sit above a key area of broken resistance, looking to turn support at the 1.31050. If we can get a pullback, and preferably if we can come back and retest broken resistance, turning support at the 1.31050, this is going to be a great place to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set with 1.3237. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.3355. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we were looking and we highlighted the 140474 as a potential pullback zone in gold, and we've had this correction down towards this key area of support. We didn't really go anywhere. We just corrected last week in gold. We didn't have much price action last week. So very simply put, we're still looking for further advances to the upside in gold. It is still currently structured to the upside. If we can get, preferably if we can come back and test the key area of support from last week at 1407.74, this is going to be a great place going into next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bullish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1480.30. Now, just bear in mind that this move may actually take a couple of weeks. So if you want a conservative target in gold, you can actually take the previous high over here, roughly, which is the 1452.00. If you want a conservative target, that can be achieved next week. So that is it from me for this week, guys. Just again to reiterate, we do have that interest rate decision out of the US on Wednesday, and therefore the markets could get quite volatile. So I would advise you, all of you who are trading dollar pairs next week, to trade them lightly. Do not overcommit. Do not take too many trades, and do not trade too big or too much size before going into the interest rate decision. With that, as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and those of you who comment on the channel as well. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend. I want to wish you all a profitable week next week. The only thing left for me to say, guys, is to take care and don't forget to trade safely.